All right, so we're going to be talking about Paperspace versus model space today. All right, so everyone at this point should have something that looks a little bit like what you see on the screen. I'm just missing one elevation over here on the side, but when we get to the point of where we're creating our Paperspace, we'll just pretend it's there for now, okay? But for the most part, you should have or at least a couple of your elevations. Today, the other half of today's class will be spent dialing in your elevations just like we did with our floor plans on the second day, okay? So we'll be working on our last two elevations today, along with learning how to put our views into a presentation format within AutoCAD. So at this point, you should have at least half, if not all of your elevations, and then you should also have your floor plans for the most part pretty dialed in. But again, if you need a little bit more time, that's okay. The actual assignment 5 is due next Wednesday, okay? So you have more time to dial in all of your elevations and your floor plans, okay? So this is about where we finished off last class, all right? And the next step that we're going to talk about is how to create a presentation within AutoCAD without physically or without actually having to take it into InDesign, okay? Up to this point, we have exported all of our work as a PDF. We've brought it into InDesign and we've put it onto our title block, okay? That works great for a lot of the times, but in reality, when you're working if you're working at a firm or you're working in any professional industry, you're gonna be doing a lot of your plotting from what we're gonna be learning today is in Paperspace, okay, versus model space, okay? Somebody besides you, tell me the difference, or from what they understand, the difference between Paperspace and model space. Somebody. I know somebody knows it. We've talked about it before. Anybody? All right, so I'll tell you. Okay, why don't you go ahead and tell the answer? Huh?
The scale.
The scale, exactly. So as we mentioned when we started AutoCAD, we didn't really ever look at Paperspace, but when you're inside model space, which is going to be the area where you're doing all of your drawing, okay? So you're drawing everything at full scale, okay? If a wall is 6 inches thick, you draw the wall at 6 inches thick. If the wall is 20 feet long, you draw the wall at 20 feet long. It's a more simpler way of drawing your house, okay? If you actually had to draw things at scale, it would be a nightmare because you'd be converting every single line in your head to a certain scale. Believe it or not, I've seen it happen in the real world. People have drawn things at scale. So as we transition into Paperspace, we're going to learn how to transfer our information that we have here in model space down into another work area. If you go down to the very bottom left-hand corner, now you can barely see this on the screen, but if you go down to the bottom left-hand corner, you're going to see two tabs that say Layout 1, Layout 2. Now I know these two ladies are in the other class, so you've probably already heard this lecture today, haven't you? Or maybe last week or Monday, right? I can see you guys working on the cabins. I think they're in Grant's morning class. So lucky for them, they get to listen to this lecture twice. They're going to be experts. So if we go down to the bottom left-hand corner, we're going to see a little tab that says Layout 1 and Layout 2, okay? If we go and click on Layout 1, you're going to notice that we have something a lot different than what we have in model space, okay? When we're in Paperspace, this is where we're going to be putting all of our work to which we will plot, but it's all going to be scaled, okay? We've all looked at a scaled set of drawings, right? So we've looked at a set of construction documents, or we've looked at drawings that we've maybe drawn in Studio and you've printed them out and they're to scale, correct? So that's what we're going to be working with here. Envision that this white border or this white background is essentially a piece of paper, okay? That's what it is, and what you see in this little view here is going to be the work that's on that piece of paper, okay? And when you look at this view, which is called a viewport, you're actually just essentially just seeing what it is that you have over here in model space. But right now, if you look at it, there's no actual scale to it, okay? This is a pretty cool little wood structure out here. I keep getting distracted by it. Is someone building their cabin outside right now?
This is for the
Cal Poly.
Oh, it's the Cal Poly. That's right. I knew that. I was really hoping someone was going for the extra credit. Tell Grant that I gave extra credit to my class for building their house in real life. I don't think they're paying attention, but no, I know they're listening. All right, so moving forward. So here we have what we see as a scale drawing of what we have in model space. Okay, if you look at it right now, you can see that we can see all of the floor plans and all of our elevations, but at a much smaller scale. So right now there is actually no scale to these drawings, okay? But if we click on this viewport right here and we type in properties, there's actually a couple ways to do this, but we're gonna type in properties and we're gonna go down to this little, under miscellaneous, you're gonna see where it says standard scale, and right now it says custom because it's just kind of at just kind of a random moment in model space. But if you click on custom, and we go down to a scale that we're more familiar with. Okay, so I think in the exercise it tells you to plot at 1/4 inch. So I'm going to scroll down to where I find 1/4 inch is equal to a foot. Yeah. I'm sorry? I did start the recording. We're rocking and rolling. So if you scroll down to this little, if you see where it says custom, we're going to go down to where it says 1/4 inch, and you're going to notice that as I roll my mouse or my cursor through these different scale options, that you see the drawing get larger and smaller. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and put it on 1/4 inch for now. I'm going to hit escape, and I'm going to back out and kind of see what we got. So right now you can see some of the line work, just barely, unfortunately, because the projector kind of sucks. But you can kind of barely see the line work that we have for our floor plans. Okay, so the reason why you only see a little bit of the line work is because we're actually looking at our viewport on an 8.5 by 11 sheet of paper. Okay, so typically when we're organizing our construction documents, organizing our design documents, we're going to be working on much larger media. Okay, typical sizes are like 24 by 36 inches. 30 by 48, 11 by 17 is kind of something, that's, you don't typically plot to that, but it's a typical piece of paper that you have in an office, okay? And various other sizes. There's probably about a dozen fairly common sizes of paper that you work with when you're plotting drawings, okay? So we can change the paper size of our layout. If you go down to where it says layout 1 and you right click on that, we're going to click on Page Setup Manager, okay? So once we click on Page Setup Manager, it tells you right here what page do you want to set up. Layout 1 is already selected. Notice at the very bottom it says plot size is 8.5 by 11. We're going to go ahead and edit that by clicking on Modify, all right? Notice that when we click on Modify, we have something that looks a little familiar to us, right? This looks like the plot manager when we're inside model space, okay? So from here, we can go ahead and make some of the adjustments to how we're going to plot from Paperspace, all right? So our first thing we're going to change is we're going to change our printer name. We're going to change that to DWG to PDF, or just Adobe PDF will work fine. And paper size, we're going to go ahead and change that to ARCH-D. ARCH-D is going to be 36 by 24 or 24 by 36, okay? So you should have the option for both, but ARCH-D is what we're going to pick. And notice that there's two different sizes. It doesn't matter which one you pick. If you pick the bottom one, which is actually kind of how you typically will see it, which is 24 inches wide at the top by 36 inches, the reason why it shows you that is because a lot of plotters are actually on a 24-inch roll. Like, for example, the one that's in the back of the class, I believe, has a 24-inch roll. So when you plot it, even though you typically look at it in landscape orientation, it's going to come out in that way. Okay, so it doesn't matter which one you pick. It will still all work the same. All right, what to plot? We're going to leave that as layout, okay, because right now it's going to plot only what's on this layout, okay? Unlike model space, you can leave it on layout and model space, but if you have a large, expansive drawing that's got, 3-4 blocks long, that's not what you always want to do. You're usually more selective in terms of what you want to pick. Or what you want to plot. So, but for when you're in Paperspace, we're going to go ahead and choose layout. All right. Scale, we're going to leave this 1:1. We're not going to change this to 1/4 inch because remember that the drawings that we're putting on Paperspace are already scaled. Okay. We're not going to change the scale. We want to plot full size when on Paperspace. All right. So this looks good. I'm not going to change anything else. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and hit OK and hit close. And you'll notice that my sheet got a lot bigger. Okay, and here, if we go down to our view, I'm going to go ahead and bring our view. I'm going to go ahead and maybe center this a little bit into the middle of the page. All right, and notice that we have a lot more room around our view. Okay, so from here, if I click on my view, I can go ahead and grab the little toggles at the end and I can make that bigger. Okay, so I'm going to keep sliding this around until I can see my entire elevation. All right, so right now, or I'm sorry, my entire floor plan. All right, so there's one of my floor plans, but I actually have, I actually want to orient it in the original way that we have it. So if we double click inside of our view, we now have an active view. So we're now actually inside model space, okay? So if I hold down my wheel, I can actually move my view around so that I can bring it to an object that I actually want. Okay, so I've moved it to my floor plan with the orientation that I'm actually looking for. Okay, and then from here, I'm going to double click outside of the view to close down the active viewport. Okay, so it is now inactive. All right, so if I click on the view one more time, my standard scale is still set to 1/4, so that's good. And then from here, I'm going to go back and I'm going to adjust my viewport to only show what I want. Okay, so it's going to look something kind of like this. And then from here, I can go ahead and go over to where it says display locked. Right now it says no. I'm going to go ahead and change that to yes. Okay, so what that does is it allows you to, if you accidentally double click into your viewport, you can't move it around. Okay, so as soon as you're happy with the location or what's inside of your viewport, you're going to want to lock it, because believe me, and I'm sure those that have worked in AutoCAD before know that it's so easy to accidentally go inside of a viewport and you move things around and it just becomes annoying. Okay, so as soon as you're done and you're happy with that location, you're going to go ahead and want to lock it. And then from there, I'm going to go ahead and move this floor plan up to another location so we leave some room for our elevations. Yeah.
How do you get it so that it's only the floor plan? Because right now I have I have two floor plans right next to each other. How is it that you can crop it so that you can?
So if you click on the viewport, you can grab these little toggles in the corner. Okay, and you can make them as large or as big, or I'm sorry, as large or as big, that's the same thing. As large or as small as you want to, okay? So right now, you might have something that looks kind of like this, where you have multiple views, or you're seeing multiple items inside your viewport. I'm gonna just click on that. I'm gonna click on that little toggle, and I'm gonna go ahead and bring it in to fill only the extents around my floor plan. Okay, if you're having troubles, I'll come show you in just a sec. We have a fairly short lecture today. All right, so that's going to be our first view. Now we have a couple more views that you're going to want to put on your sheet. You're going to want to put on all of your current elevation views. Okay, sorry, losing my voice. So here's our floor plan, and what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and take this, and we can create a new viewport a couple different ways. You can either select the one that you have, and you can simply copy paste. All right, so now you have another viewport, although right now it's probably locked. So I'm going to go ahead and change this to no, and then from there I can double click on it and I can move it around and get my elevation. Okay, so there's my elevation that we have. All right, go ahead and click out of it. Make sure that we still have a 1/4 of an inch scale. All right, because it is very easy to accidentally make it not to scale as soon as you click inside that viewport. All right, I'm going to go ahead and bring my viewport extents down. All right, and I'm going to do the same thing. I'm just going to copy and paste this down. All right, the other option is if you go up to view, you should be able to, let me just move down my properties dialog box, or I'll come back to it in a second. If you go ahead and click on, layout, you can click on rectangular box up here. All right, so click on rectangular box and I can draw a box on my screen and I will have a new viewport. The good thing about copy paste is that it will at least copy and paste all of the properties from the original viewport with the scale, and it might be one less step of getting to where you need to be. Okay, so I'm going to double click inside this view. Actually, let's turn my properties back on. All right, so I'm going to click on my new view, and we're going to display lock. No, good. I'm going to go ahead and double click inside there, and I'm going to move this to my next elevation. All right, there it is. Click outside, make sure that we're still to scale. Looks like I am. And I'm going to do the same thing for my third elevation. You guys will do it for the fourth, okay? Remember, I only have 3 elevations at this particular moment. Okay, so I'm going to double click on my view, and I'm going to slide it over to my last elevation, like so, and click outside. All right, so as soon as you have all your elevations on your screen, you have a couple more steps to go before we're ready to plot. Okay, the next thing that you should think about is how are you going to organize your views onto a sheet. Okay, you want to start to think about a logical way of organizing your views. Okay, you could put all 3 of your views on one side, like we're kind of currently doing, which is not really a bad strategy, but kind of typical architectural practice is that you will usually place your view that's directly below the floor plan. You will place that view right below the floor plan. Okay, so in my particular instance, this is going to be that view. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and bring that view to the bottom and line it up so that if someone's looking at this sheet, they can take, or they understand that this elevation lines up with this face, okay? And then from there, and if you want to take it a step further, you could actually just kind of take a few extra steps to make sure that those walls are aligned, okay? And then from there, I'm going to move up, oops. I'm going to go ahead and move up my other 2 views, okay? Like so. And you know what I'll do, I'll just copy this one another time. We'll pretend that's my 4th view. All right, and another thing that you might do, here actually I'll copy this one, is line up some, or make sure that you have a common alignment with some of your other roof parapets, okay? So you might want to align right here, this blue line, that's the same parapet as this blue line. So you might want to align those 2 lines as well, and also your floor elevation, or your common floor elevation. All right, so those are just a couple things to think about prior to plotting your sheets in Paperspace. All right, so right now, if we go up to, I'm going to go ahead and close my properties dialog box, and I'm going to go ahead and type in plot, P-L-O-T. I'm going to go ahead and continue. Right now it says our DVC pen style that we created a couple classes ago is missing, okay? Don't forget that we can go up to options to fix this problem. We can go to printer support file path, down to plot style table search, and I'm going to go ahead and change this location to my thumb drive where I currently have it stored. All right, I think I have it under this folder right here, so I'm going to go ahead and hit OK. OK again, and then I'm going to go up to, or I'm going to type in plot, P-L-O-T, continue, and if I go over to preview, all right, notice that all of my settings are already there because we already set them up in our layout down here. When we right-clicked and went to Page Setup Manager, all of those options that we set up there are now already currently set up, okay? And also notice that our pen style that we created earlier in the, or a couple classes ago, is now loaded into our system. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and click on preview, and we're going to get a little idea of what our page setup looks like. Now, ideally, I don't want to see these boxes or these viewports around my elevations and my floor plan. Now, obviously, the only thing that I haven't done was I haven't assigned a color to my red lines right here. Even though they look pink on the screen, these are actually red. So before I plotted, the last thing that I would want to do was make sure that I assign a color to my red line, okay? So I'll go back and do that later, but let's look at how to remove these boundaries around our plans and elevations, okay? So I can go ahead and hit escape one time. That will bring me back to the file, okay? And then from here, I'm going to go ahead and type in layer, okay? And I'm going to create a new layer for my viewports. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and create a new layer, and I'm going to call this viewports. And it doesn't matter what color it is, all right? You can make this whatever color you want. I'm going to make it Can you guys see yellow on the screen? I guess you kind of can. I'm going to go ahead and make it blue because it's a color that you can see. All right. So I'm going to go ahead and make the color of the viewport blue, but I'm going to make it a non-printing layer. Okay. I'm going to make it a non-printing layer so that the viewports, the rectangles around the viewports don't plot. All right. So I'm going to go ahead and click on the printer for viewports. I'm going to exit out of my layer properties manager, and I'm going to select all of my viewports and change the layer at the very top to viewports. Okay. Now you might be thinking, okay, well you just put all of your viewports on a non-printing layer. Well, it will still actually print your it will still print all of your drawings, but it's just not going to print the boundary around your viewport. Okay. So a couple other nice things about viewports as you guys are setting up your screens. You may, in your drawings, you may still see, for example, maybe your topography lines, okay? I don't think I have them on in my drawing, but in yours, you may see the topography lines going through your elevations, okay? Let's see, let me go back here. So for example, if I actually have 3 separate files on my screen, but if I was to put this view onto a viewport, you would have that topography line running through your elevation. Okay, if you want to turn layers on and off within a viewport, you can do that. Okay, so in the event that you do have topography lines, if you just double click on your view, okay, double click on your view so that it's active, you can then go up to your layers, and here's my topography layer right here. If you click on this little button that says freeze or thaw in current viewport, that will turn off that layer in just the viewport. Okay, so, and it's fairly common to have multiple layers on, and you just may not want to show something in one viewport that you want to show in another. Okay, so if you want to turn off a layer in just a viewport, instead of clicking on the light bulb or the freeze thaw, you're going to click on what looks like the little window with the little sun. Okay, and as soon as you click on that, that will turn off that layer in just the given viewport. Okay, in my particular scenario, I don't have that going on right now, so I don't have to worry about that. All right, so I'm going to really quickly type in properties. I'm going to make sure that all of my views are locked. Okay, so display locked, I'm going to change that to yes. All right, so this is kind of my last and final. If I was working in my office, as soon as one person in my office might lay down all of the viewports for a particular sheet, it's very common that you're always going to want to lock it when you're done, so that if someone else opens it, you kind of know that it's already situated and you're not gonna accidentally move it somewhere. All right, so I'm going to change these all to yes. Just lock all of my viewports. And display locked, good. I think my other ones are all set. Okay, so from there we can go ahead and type in plot again, continue, type in preview, and that looks like what I'm looking for today. So minus the red lines, I'll fix that here in a few minutes. But for the most part, this is right here what I'm looking for you guys to turn in for exercise 23. Okay, if you don't have all of your elevations finished, that's okay. Turn in everything that you have. Just remember that you're gonna have to have them all done by the time you turn in assignment number 5. Okay, so from there I can go ahead and plot. All right, so I'm gonna go ahead and click on OK, and I can go ahead and plot to my thumb drive. All right, so I'm gonna go to my folder I've created for today's class, 13B, and I'm gonna call this exercise 23 final. Okay, hit OK. And here we have our sheet. Okay, so the nice thing about this sheet is exactly 24 by 36. If you plot it out to a plotter, it'll come out to be exactly that dimension. Okay, so any questions about Paperspace versus model space? Any questions at all? Okay, good. So that is what I'm expecting for today's exercise. Before we move on, and before we take a break, I want to go ahead and show you guys one more thing, and that's going to be how to translate your topography that we have our floor plans and our elevations in to an actual, I'm going to show you guys how that actually affects our ground plane. Okay, so for example, right now I have my floor plan right here and I have the corresponding elevation. what I'm going to do to create the actual topography is I'm going to alter this pink line right here. Okay, so that represents my ground plane, but knowing our topography that we're working with right now, it's not actually flat. There's actually some slope. So you might ask yourself, how does that affect my elevation? Okay, so this is going to be kind of the last and final step that you would take to getting a more precise, more dialed in elevation. Okay, I'd like to see you guys do this with at least one of your elevations. Okay, I'd rather you guys focus on getting all 4 of them dialed in versus spending time worrying about this kind of minuscule detail. This is definitely a more advanced CAD technique that you would typically not even learn until you go into like more of a professional workplace. But I'm going to at least show you guys how to do it. If you want to do them to all of your elevations, that's fine. Okay, so let's go ahead and look at how we're going to do that. All right, so the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and use my non-printing layer. All right, so let's see, where's my layer for? I don't have one in this file. Okay, so let's see, it's type in layer. I'm just going to create I'm going to create another layer for my ray lines. Okay. All right, I'm going to leave that. Let's make that red. Okay, I'm going to change this to a non-printing layer. Okay, and the next thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to draw a box directly around my, wrong layer, around my building. All right, so I'm going to use my ray lines. These are all just reference lines. All right, so I'm going to draw a box around my building. Okay. Like so. I'm going to go ahead and just use the fillet command to close off my box. Okay, and then from there I'm going to go ahead and type in ray, and I'm going to make this line extend out like so. Okay, this line represents kind of where that portion of the building is cutting at that given point of the topography. Okay, so we're kind of pretending that our building is actually cutting through right in front of I guess in this instance we're actually seeing our stairs, so it'd actually be a little bit further out. Okay, so you could take these lines that we've created and you could move them right to the front of our stairs. Okay, and then from there what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and type in R for ray, and we're going to go ahead and draw a line from all of the intersections of our topography. Okay, so here's one right here. I'm going to go ahead and draw that down, and I'm going to draw about 5 or 6 of these. Okay, maybe one there, there, and we're going to go all the way back over here. There's a connection, there's one, and there's one. Okay, so we've created 6 lines here. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and create another ray line. I'm going to start from my farthest point, either from the far left or from the far right. This point is completely arbitrary. It does not matter where you pick it. It could be right here. It could be down here. It doesn't matter. Okay, so I'm just going to pick a point down here and extend my ray line out. Okay, and then from there I'm going to offset this line 1 foot. And the reason why I'm going to offset it 1 foot is because each of these topography lines are a 1 foot elevation change. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and use the offset command, and I'm going to type in the distance to be 1 foot, and I'm going to offset this line the same amount of times as I did create ray lines up here at the top. So I'm going to have a total of 6 lines by the time I'm done. Okay, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. All right, we see how we did that? And then from there, we're going to go up to where it says draw, and we're going to click on that little drop down menu, and we're going to use a tool that we haven't learned yet, and that's going to be a spline. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and click on spline CV, spline curve. Okay, and we're going to click on that point, and we're going to start at where the first line, being that we're actually going uphill here. Remember that our river is running right through this point, and it's kind of, the grades are traveling upwards. Okay, and it's also going uphill going this way. Yeah,
it's kind of too fast.
We'll go back in just a second. Remember that I'm also recording this, so you can always go back, okay? The main point, I just don't want the video to be an hour and a half long, so I'll go through it pretty quickly and I can go back and show you again in a few minutes, okay? So from here, we're gonna go ahead and start at our first line at the lowest point of our elevation, which is right here. And I'm gonna go ahead and click once, and I'm gonna start to click on the intersections of points for each consecutive line, okay? So we're starting here at the bottom. I'm gonna, with my spline curve tool activated, I'm gonna go ahead and click on each consecutive point. So this was 1, this is gonna be 2, and we're gonna go up and click on 3, and then 4, and then 5. Oh, I think I was actually 1 short. So we would actually go 1 more, okay? So let me go back and let me just offset this one more time. Okay, so let's try that just one more time. So curve, spline curve, start here at the bottommost intersection, and we're gonna go 1, 2, 3. Let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, and then from there, I'm just gonna hit my space bar, all right? And I could see my curve there. And then now I can go ahead and delete all of the lines that I just created. All right, I don't need any of these lines here anymore. Don't need these either. I actually originally set these up so that I could line up my elevations, okay? But from here I can get rid of all of these lines, including all of my ray lines that we see here. Okay, and now notice this line is now representational of our actual slope in topography. Okay, so from there I can go ahead and move this up and line this up with our floor plan. Okay, so I'm going to line it straight up, connect it like so, and I can now get rid of my purple line. Okay, so this right here is currently a block. I'm going to go ahead and use the explode command to get rid of that. So notice our old elevation line is right here. So that was where we used to show where grade was. I'm going to go ahead and delete that. I'm going to change this line from a from my ray lines layer. I'm going to go ahead and change it to my elevation. All right, so this is a nice bold thick line that will represent the ground plane. Okay, and then from there I can go ahead and bring all of my building lines to match and meet up with my new ground plane. Okay, so it's a very subtle difference, but it's realistic to how architecture works. You very rarely build on a perfectly level site, okay, especially when you're in Yosemite. Okay, so from there I can go ahead and bring all of my building lines to line up with my new ground plane. Okay, any questions about that? Now obviously I don't need the line to be this long. Okay, if you want to trim some of this, you can do that. All right, so you might do something like this, just drawing a couple lines here. Use my trim tool and get rid of some of the excess ground plane lines. Okay, all right, so that's going to be an example of how we would create a new ground plane. All right, if you wanted to create one of your other ones, you would do it the exact same way. Okay, but let's just say, for example, I won't take you through the whole process, but let's say you wanted to create the ground plane line for this side. All right, I would then go to my I'm going to go to my elevations. This right here is my elevation for that particular for that side of the building. I'm going to go ahead and select that. Yeah. Sorry, there we go. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and select that elevation. I'm going to copy it. I'm going to bring it back over to my other floor plan. I'm going to paste this as a block. All right, and I'm going to rotate it 90 degrees like so. Now, some people, and some of you guys may have done this, last class when we were working on creating our elevations, we actually extended our ray lines and we started drawing our elevations. it's actually a fairly common process to actually draw them, actually radiate them around the floor plan. So I personally like to do it a little bit differently. I like to look at them all in the same direction, but you could essentially do the same thing by just radiating all of your floor plans out. So I'm just drawing a little reference line here that represents that edge of the building. I'm going to take my block and I'm going to just align it with it like so. All right, maybe move it a little bit closer, like so, okay? And then from there, you can start the same process of drawing all of your lines, okay? Now, this isn't the method that we just discussed. You know, it's not 100% perfect. It's probably about 98%, being that we just kind of dragged it up. But that will give you a fairly realistic example of where your actual ground plane is using the elevation of the topography map that we're working with, okay? So any questions about that at all? And I can walk through the process again in just a second. Okay, good? All right, I'm gonna go ahead and end the recording there.